You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Kevin Helfrich of the Action Sports Network was at Indiana Wesleyan's national quarterfinal game yesterday. The Wildcats were beaten 20-9 by Benedictine. How did it play out, Kevin?
Well, Greg, the game's tone was set on the game's opening drive. Indiana Wesleyan received the football first. They drove down to the Benedictine 30-yard line and faced a 4th and 1. Decided to try to run the football up the middle, and the Benedictine defense was just stout and stuffed the run. And the Wildcats turned the football over, and then Benedictine got their possession, and they drove 70 yards and converted 3 third downs along the way. And they ran it in with a 3-yard run from Dalton Witherspoon, and it was 7-0 visitors. Indiana Wesleyan just came out pretty lifeless there in the first quarter, and then on the very next possession, Indiana Wesleyan quarterback Kyle Antoine was intercepted on their own 26-yard line, and the Ravens quickly converted that into another touchdown, and quickly you found the Wildcats down 14-0 with just 2:20 left in the opening quarter. And on the third possession the Wildcats they turned the ball over for the third time to start the game. Just a disastrous start. Had a wide-open receiver, Isaac Smith, who caught the football, but then fumbled at the Benedictine 30-yard line. And that really just was about as bad of a start as you could wish for if you're a Wildcat player, fan, coach. And Benedictine, it's just too big of a hole to really dig yourself out of in a playoff caliber game. And Benedictine would add 3 more points in the second quarter to push the halftime lead to 17-0. It's the first time all season long Indiana Wesleyan offense had been shut out. It just didn't look like themselves. But in an interesting twist to start the second half, Benedictine actually elected to kick the football off again, which to me was quite surprising with a 17-point lead and, a chance to milk some of that clock off in the start. They elected to kick the football to Iwu and chose the direction with the wind to be at their back for the final quarter. So Indiana Wesleyan again found themselves in the third quarter just on their first possession, another interception from Antoine. And it was unfortunate as there were several balls that just slipped through receivers' hands on this day. And this one actually, the receiver had it, kicked it up, and Benedictine was right, Johnny on the spot to pick off yet another one. And the Wildcats' next possession looked like a promising possession, still a 17-0 game. But they had a wide-open receiver in Ryan Whitwell who looked like he was going to catch it inside the 20-yard line. Unfortunately, it looked like he just took his eye off the football, and that fell harmlessly. And the Indiana Wesleyan then on the next play was sacked and took him out of field goal position. Their offensive line allowed the least sacks of any offensive line in the NAIA all year long, but they had 2 costly ones in this one. That one took him out of field goal range. And the Wildcats finally get on the board to start the fourth quarter. As they get a run from Whitwell, but a botched hold on the extra point. The Wildcats had to scramble for a desperation pass that fell incomplete, so still trailed 17-6 early in the fourth quarter. And then on the next possession, they did get down inside the Raven territory again, and they were only able to come away with a Josh Clifton 40-yard field goal. Again, it was another sack that set them back. They had ball at the 10-yard line, but unable to get it into the end zone. So they still had a fighting chance, 17-9, and had to kick off with just under 7 minutes to play in this one. But the defense had one of those costly penalties that you just can't have. They would have forced a 3rd and 2 for the Ravens in their own territory, but a face mask call gave the Ravens 15 more yards and an automatic first down. And they converted the very next third down play on 3rd and 4. They completed a pass for 13 yards, setting up their game-decisive field goal from 44 yards out with just over 2 minutes. And then when the Wildcats got the ball back, they moved the football onto the Ravens side of the field for the 7th time of the night. But it was only fitting that the ball would slip through another Wildcat receiver hands at the 25-yard line, falling into the hands of the Ravens for their 3rd interception on the day. And they would take a knee from there on out. And it ends a season that otherwise had been outstanding for Indiana Wesleyan. They finished this season 11-2. So a disappointing ending to what was started out what we hoped to be a promising day.
Yeah, and they had more than 60 more yards than Benedictine, so it wasn't a question of being able to move the ball.
No, that's right. I mean, Indiana Wesleyan had 343 total yards, although that's the second lowest total they had all season long. And and you look back, the only game they had fewer yards, they also lost. So, I think this one definitely is at the hands of the offense. You hate to blame, one unit or the other, but the defense really did hold up their end of the bargain outside of, again, that first possession. Wildcats tend to have a slow start on defense, giving up points, on the first drive multiple times this season, and you just can't afford that in a game of this magnitude. But other than that, they really played outstanding and kept them in this football game to really even give them a chance there in that fourth quarter. But it just wasn't the offense's day, unfortunately.
On offense, though, a couple of pretty good performances. Tell me about Isaac Smith and Ryan Whitwell. Although he did drop that pass, both had pretty good days.
Yeah, Ryan Whitmore did rush for over 100 yards. He had 20 carries for 102 yards. That's over a 5-yard average. And Isaac did catch 9 passes for 98 yards, and he had a spectacular catch down the middle of the field that is Sports Center worthy to keep one drive going and got the Wildcats inside the Raven 30-yard line. And those two, performed to their normal standards, but Indiana Wesleyan, unfortunately, never really got any big plays. Their longest run of the day it was only a 15-yard run, and that came from quarterback Kyle Antoine on a scramble. So, they didn't get the big yardage that they're used to getting throughout the year, and then they really had no big pass plays other than one 35-yard reception to really, it's not something that we're common on seeing. It's
Right.
just not their day, and a good give Benedictine all the credit in the world. They had a great game plan. Every window that Antoine had to try to throw in was tight, and they had defenders, it seemed like, everywhere. And it's a tough way to end the season for Indiana Wesleyan. Really thought that this was one that they would win at home, where they had won 25 straight games. It's been tough for opponents to come in here and get a victory, but on this day, Benedictine was the better team, without a doubt.
First loss of the season to an NAIA team. The fewest points they'd scored coming into the season against an NAIA team had been 31.
Yeah, so that just tells you that it just was, not their day, and it goes a little bit of both ways. Credit to Benedictine's defense, but at the same time, Indiana Wesleyan's offense hurt themselves without a doubt. You cannot win a football game, no matter what it is, when you're turning the ball over 6 times. 2 were turnovers on downs, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble, and the other team had 1 turnover, and that turnover really was not a turnover. It was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half, where Indiana Wesleyan intercepted it at the end zone. So in my books, that's not really a turnover. The half was ending. It was the last play of the half. And so, yeah, when you don't win the turnover battle and you have untimely penalties, they didn't have a lot, but when they got them, they were untimely, and you don't win playoff games that way.
And, of course, today you are disappointed in the loss, but when you look back at a season like this, winning 11 games, it was quite a year, and the program's really at a really good place, isn't it?
It is, and just looking at, they won the conference for the 3rd straight year. They tied last year, it's the 3rd year in a row they've won or had a share of the conference title. So for a program that's had 7 years of competing, that's pretty outstanding. And they had 8 offensive players who were selected all conference first team, led by the outstanding Isaac Smith at receiver. He was the player of the year on offense. And then defensively, they also had 6 first teamers, led by, again, the player of the year on defense, Clayton Mosier. So when you look at that, and they can able to sit back and let this one kind of, soak in, and they can look back and know that they had a tremendous season. 3rd time this program's reached the quarterfinals of NAIA football, and it'll be interesting to see how this team is moving forward. A lot of uncertainty as far as defense. How many of these guys, they had a lot of seniors on this team. Now with COVID, they may get some of those guys back, but they'll definitely lose a lot of guys on that side of the football. And on offense, they got a lot of skill players back. They're promising with Kyle Antoine at quarterback. He'll only be a junior next year. They get Isaac Smith will be a senior next year. They're the top wide receiver, and they'll get Ryan Whitwell, their number 1 back. It was only a freshman, and the number 2 back, Roosevelt Cage, is only a junior. And those guys both rushed for over 1,000 yards. So they got a couple offensive linemen who definitely will be back. Actually 3 for sure. And then again, if they have those other guys available from the COVID year, they'll get maybe the other 2 back, but the other 2 are seniors. So we'll see. And Will Angel. So we'll see how it goes next year for the Wildcats. They had a remarkable season. They also had Josh Clifton, the outstanding kicker. He was all conference first team as well. So, and he's back. So, yeah, a lot of pieces coming back. Hopefully, if you're Indiana Wesleyan, you reload and you compete again next year for the same thing, and then try to make it one step further.
Thanks to Kevin for coming on the Central Indiana Sports Report and talking about the Wildcats. And thank you for listening. Please go right now and like, subscribe, or follow us. I don't need to run through all of the different platforms. You know which one you use. Please go and do that now so you do not miss a single segment. And tell a friend. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. And Alex Susie.